Chapter 2. An Unknown Threat. Each day, say to yourself that you are the best, the strongest, and the most deadly. Eventually, you will start to believe it. Finally, it will come true. It came true for me. I am Grimalkin. Just before dawn, I rested for an hour, drinking cool water from a stream and chewing my last few strips of dried meat. My supplies were almost exhausted, and I would need fresh meat to keep up my strength. Rabbits would have been easy to trap, but I was still being pursued and could not afford to rest for more than a few moments. The majority of my enemies, although, were 2 miles back now, but one of their number had come on ahead of the group and was closing in on me. It was an unknown creature I'd first sniffed in the woods. It was moving faster than I was. Whatever the danger it presented, soon I would have to turn and face it, but I had to know more. So I took a small mirror from the sheath on my shoulder strap, muttered a spell, and then breathed on it. Within moments, a face appeared. It was Agnes Sourbuts. She was a dean, but bore no great love for her own clan. She lived apart from the life of Pendle, and had helped me before. We had a bond between us, a common interest. She was the aunt of Alice Dean, and a close friend of Tom Ward, the spook's apprentice. Agnes is skilled in the use of the mirror. Few are her equal in locating people, objects, and dark entities, but she keeps herself to herself, and few know that she is also a powerful scryer, far better than Martha Ribstalk, our greatest Malconseer, who is now dead. It was too dark for Agnes to read my lips, so I breathed on the mirror and made my request by writing on its surface. I wanted to know more about the creature that pursued me. What pursues me? What will happen when I face it? Can you help? I wiped the mirror. Agnes nearly smiled and nodded. She would do her best to help. So I ran on, trying to maintain the same distance between myself and my pursuer. The leather bag slapped against my back with every second stride. The fiend's head seemed to be growing heavier and heavier by the hour. It was undoubtedly slowing me down. The pursuit was relentless, and gradually I was being overtaken. The fact did not displease me. Running like this was not my preferred option. I looked forward to the moment when I would have to turn and fight. Dawn came, and with it grey skies and a chill drizzle drifting into my face. After about an hour, I felt the mirror begin to move within its sheath. Agnes was trying to make contact, so I halted beneath the shelter of a large tree. I lifted out the mirror and found the witch's face staring back. It was a kindly face, with round cheeks and a plump chin, but one glance at her eyes told you that she was brave and not a woman to be trifled with. Her name was Sourbuts because she'd married a man from Whaley, leaving Rowley and the Dean village behind. 10 years later he died, and she went home, but this time to live in a cottage on the outskirts of Rowley. Although she liked to keep her distance from the clan, nevertheless she knew all their business. There wasn't much that went on in Pendle that escaped Agnes and her mirror. She gave me a brief smile of welcome, but I could see the warning in her eyes before she spoke. It would not be good news. I concentrated, staring hard at her lips to read whatever was being silently mouthed at me. What follows you is a crutch. It was created by an alliance of witches, abhumans and mages, specially to hunt you down and slay you. Its mother was a she-wolf, but its father a demon. Can you name the demon? I asked. That knowledge was vital. I needed to know what powers it had. It would be wolf-like, but much would be determined by the gifts passed down from its father. My own clan, the Malkins, have also created crutches. The last one was named Tib. We used it to try and counter the power of a seer from the Moorhead clan. Crutches are usually created for a specific purpose. This one was supposed to kill me. Agnes shook her head. I am sorry, she mouthed. Strong magic cloaks that information, but I will keep trying. Yes, I'd be grateful if you do that, but did you scry also? Did you see the outcome of my fight against the crutch? If you fight it too soon, you will suffer a mortal wound. That much is certain. Agnes told me, her face grim. And if I delay that fight, the outcome is less clear, but your chances of survival increase as time passes. I thanked her, replaced the mirror in its sheath, and set off again in a sprint, trying to stay ahead of the crutch. As I ran, I thought over what Agnes had said. The fact is, the crutch had made me determined to elude it for as long as possible. Such creatures had short lifespans, but age rapidly, so why face it in its prime? I had to keep the fiend's head out of its servant's clutches. That was more important than my growing urge to turn and fight my enemy. I did believe in the power of scrying, but it was not always accurate. In fact, sometimes, though rarely, it could be inaccurate. I remember my first consultation with Martha Ribstalk. Rather than using a mirror, her chosen method of scrying was to peer into a steaming, blood-tainted cauldron, in which she boiled up thumbs and fingerless bones to strip away the dead flesh. At that time, she was the foremost practitioner of that dark art. As arranged, I visited her 1 hour after midnight. She had already drunk the blood of an enemy and performed the necessary rituals. "Do you accept my money?" I demanded. She looked at me disdainfully, but nodded, so I tossed 3 coins into the cauldron. "Be seated," she commanded sternly, pointing to the cold stone flags below the large bubbling pot. The air was thick with the smell of blood, and each breath I took increased the metallic taste on the back of my tongue. I obeyed, sitting cross-legged and gazing up at her through the steam. She had remained standing from beyond the cauldron, so that her body would be higher than mine, a tactic frequently employed by those who wish to dominate others. But I was no coward, and met her gaze calmly. "What did you see?" I asked steadily. "What is my future?" She did not speak for a long time, and it pleased her to keep me waiting. I think Martha was annoyed because I'd asked a question rather than waiting to be told the outcome of her scrying. "You've chosen an enemy," she said at last. "The fiend is the most powerful enemy any mortal could face. The outcome should be simple. Unless you allow it, the fiend cannot be near you in life, but he will await your death and then seize your soul and subject it to everlasting torments. However, there is something else that I cannot see clearly. There is uncertainty, another force that may intervene, one which presents a faint glimmer of hope." She paused, stepped forward, and peered into the steam. Once again, there was a long pause. "There is someone. A child just born. Who is this child?" I demanded. "I cannot see him clearly," Martha Ribstalk admitted. "Someone hides him from my sight, and as for you, even with his intervention, only one highly skilled with weapons could hope to survive. Only one with the speed and ruthlessness of a witch assassin. Only one of the greatest witch assassins alive. One even more deadly than Canode could do that. Nothing less will do, so what hope will you have?" Martha mocked. At that time, Canode was the witch assassin of the Malkins, a fearsome woman of great strength and speed who had slain 27 pretenders to her position, 3 each year. As this was the 10th year of her reign, I rose to my feet and smiled down at Martha. "I will slay Canode and then take her place. I will become the witch assassin of the Malkins, the greatest of them all." Martha had laughed mockingly as I walked away, but I was perfectly serious. To defend the fiend, I knew that I would have to develop my fighting skills and become the assassin of the Malkin clan. And then I would have to form an alliance with that unknown child. Eventually I learned his name. Tom Ward. I hurried on, trying to pick up my pace. The drizzle had now become a torrential downpour, driving into my face and soaking me to the skin. As I ran, I meditated on the art of scrying. Generally, a witch uses a mirror, but some go deep into trances and glimpse the future through dreams. Some throw bones into the north wind and see how they land. It is also possible to cut open a dead animal and examine its entrails, but seeing into the future is uncertain. No matter what some scryers would have us believe, there is always an element of chance. Not everything can be foreseen, and a witch can never foretell her own death. Another must scry it for her. I disliked Martha Ribstalk, but she was good at her art, and I consulted her many times after that first session. During our final meeting, she predicted the time and manner of my death. She insisted it would come in many years in the future, but I could not rely on that. Time has many paths. Perhaps I've already taken one that made her prophecy void. If so, I know exactly what step that was. I have allied myself with John Gregory and Thomas Ward. I have chosen to use my own dark powers to fight the dark and destroy the fiend. That could change everything. I was climbing now, my pace slowing. I reached a ridge and looked back in the direction of my pursuer. I was crouched low so the Cretch could not see me against the skyline and waited, eager to catch my first glimpse of it. I did not have long to wait. I saw the beast created by my enemies emerge from a cluster of sycamores and leap into a ditch before disappearing into a hedgerow. I saw it for only a second, but it was enough to tell me that I was dealing with something dangerous and formidable. From a distance it looked, as I had suspected, like an enormous wolf. Just how big, it was difficult to estimate. It seemed to be lopping along on 4 legs and was covered in black hair that was flecked with silver on its back. Then I realized the front 2 limbs were really powerful, muscular arms. The creature was designed to fight and kill me. Everything about it would have been crafted to achieve one objective, my death. It would be swift in combat and very strong. Those arms would be like those of an human, able to crunch my bones and tear off my limbs. No doubt its teeth and claws would be poisoned. One bite or even a scratch might be enough to bring me to my slow, agonizing death. Perhaps that was what Agnes Salbard had meant when she referred to the threat of a mortal wound. My instincts screamed at me to turn and fight now, to get it over with and slay this wretch. Pride bade me to do the same. I wanted to test myself in combat against it. I'd prove that I was stronger and better than anything they could send at me. Oh, Mr. Wolf, are you ready to die? But more was at stake here than my survival or my pride. In battle, a chance often played a part. An ankle could be twisted by a stone hidden in the grass. An enemy less skilled than me might be favored by a lucky strike. Malkin assassins had died like that before, bested by inferior opponents. I found it difficult to imagine being defeated under any circumstances, but if I did lose, the fiend's head would fall into the hands of my enemies, and before long he would walk the earth once more. I had promised to keep the fiend's head out of the clutches of his servants, so despite my lust for combat, I would continue to run for just as long as I could. And that is chapter 2.